and welcome to the Monster Sci-Fi Show podcast. I am your host, The Monster, back yet again with another Monster Sci-Fi Show podcast. Can you stop making all that damn noise?
I'm not making any noise.
For this podcast, believe it or not, I decided to add my wife to the podcast for a bit.
Because you had nothing better to do.
No, because I wanted to share your knowledge on something I did not know about. So,
but there's so much.
So as I'm moving on to the next topic, dork, because I do want it, I really want her to talk about something that I found out today what was going on, and it's really important that I have her talk about it because she knows more about it than I do. On that subject, nothing else. All right, well, let's begin with a couple of tidbit news. We have the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in early development doing a spin-off series, which, honestly, it's not... Okay, let me back up this. I deserted the series early on and came back to it a couple of months ago, and I've been caught up. And I loved it. The new episodes after the break has been kind of on a slow downward spiral, kind of meandering. We are getting the Inhumans. We are getting the secondary S.H.I.E.L.D. Identity crisis or something to that effect. Basically, nothing's going to happen until the Avengers movie comes out in the next couple of weeks, which is actually 3 weeks from today. So nothing's really going to happen, nothing earth-shattering or shaking, and hopefully, when the movie does come out, the series will pick up again. But at this point, even though it has gotten better, I don't believe it's worthy enough to have characters be spun off to another series when the show basically has suffered to begin with since day one. And yes, it's, again, I can't stress it enough. It's gotten better, but it's not like Arrow is introducing The Flash, in which they did a great job and spun that series, and that series has took off running, literally. So I don't see this working on that level with that series. It just doesn't work. I will talk about Daredevil later on, which I think is a better alternative than doing an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. spinoff. The next bit of news. The Kingsman actress who I have a new crush on. Yeah.
Excuse me?
You heard what I said.
Yeah, I heard what you said.
Yeah, it's like everything else. Who don't you have a crush on?
No, I
well,
don't say that anymore.
Well, I'm saying
because
this week.
It's sad now.
No, it's not sad.
Believe me, it's sad.
No, it's not. Anyway.
Believe me.
All right. So, we have Sophia Boutella, which you have not seen in Kingsman, but she plays the assassin who has these...
I saw the trailer.
So, she is now going to be in the lead role for Star Trek 3. I don't know the details of that, other than that she has this lead role. So, I don't know if Idris Elba is now out of the picture, or are we going to have her be the female baddie for the next movie? I don't know, but the fact that she is now, that she got this role.
What's the movie about?
No one knows, other than possibly we may get Klingons in the next movie. That's rumored. Klingons, off the starboard bow. Exactly. But she is going to be in another movie coming up in actually another week called Monsters: The Dark Continent, which is a sequel to the first Monsters movie that was Gareth Edwards, who went to do Godzilla. But he has nothing to do with this sequel, so... But she again has the lead role in that movie, and I will be watching it for next week, if I can ever find it. Because it's already released internationally, but next week is going to be us on the US side. So, the last two bits I want to talk about is the Dark Tower series. Finally, after some time, looks like it's actually picking up steam because Sony is now making this a priority to get this series up and running. And this is where I'm going to bring in my wife, Jennifer.
Much to his dismay.
No, not dismay. Just dismemberment.
Oh.
So.
Whatever.
Okay. But you have read these books, or at least more than I have.
I haven't read. I've only read 3 of them.
But still, you read more than me.
Okay.
Like everything else, I read slow. But still,
God, I want to do this so much. Okay.
Yes, I know. But you really had more information on this whole subject that I wanted you to talk about. Okay, so you said that this was based on...
Oh, okay. Well, basically, the actual story of Roland, who is the main character in the Dark Tower, is a knight who is on his way to... He needs to face off against the black man. The man in black. Not a black person, just a man in black. Which is actually a character that's used a lot in different genres when it comes down to talking about the evil or Satan. Even in the old stories, like from the stories of the Scarlet Letter and the story of Rip Van Winkle, you know, and the people in the New World, when they faced off against the evil that had come up before them, they referred to that as the Dark Man, or the Black Man. Which basically just goes to show the fact that they have no imagination. No, I'm kidding. But...
What are relations to the Men in Black?
Anyway, so... but it turns out that the Dark Tower series of books was based on a poem written by Robert Browning titled Childe Roland to the Dark Tower Came. And this was written about a knight trying to find his way. He was actually... Child is actually the term for a man who is not, you know, just like a child. He's not yet a knight. And he needs to get to the Dark Tower. And I haven't actually read through the whole thing, so I'm kind of like halfway through everything. But basically he gets through the Wastelands, which was a type of a post-apocalyptic type of thing, like the way it would be a modern society that has fallen by the wayside. You know, kind of like something out of, I guess, like The Howling or Clockwork Orange or
a dystopian future, basically, that...
Well, not so much as dystopian. It's just the fact that it's like what happens after everything, after the shit hits the fan, basically. Right. You know, it's kind of like, you know, Fort Apache, the Bronx, the Bronx. You know, people walking through wastelands, you know, trying to, like, Mad Max kind of stuff.
Why are you bringing my heritage back into this? What did I do to you?
Anyway, so then. When I was reading through Spark Notes so I can get to a full poem, I found out that this is actually based... The Childe Roland to the Dark Tower Came is actually based on a song sung by a character named Edgar in King Lear, the Shakespeare play. And when he's on his quest for the Dark Tower, and they mention, you know, some of the different pieces from the poem in the song. You know, they mention the fact that the wasteland is barren plain, symbolizing the sterile, corrupted conditions of modern life. Depopulated and remote, a stand-in for the city. Dead comrades, abnormal responses. And so it is. It's a very strange story. I mean, I've only read, like I said, about three books.
And he has a total.
I read through the waste. He has 7.
Has 7 total. Okay.
I've read through the Wastelands, which is the dystopian society. You know, it's kind of like that. It's you know, basically it is a wasteland. It's like there's nothing there, but, like, you know, there's, like, destruction and there's death and there's strange creatures. It's another world. It's a whole other world than what we know.
Right.
And he has to travel through this world, kind of like Samurai Jack, to try to get back to his time. Because the creatures that live in the world that Samurai Jack knows are completely different from the real creatures of feudal Japan.
Right.
And there's nothing he can do about trying to stop the demon until he gets to the end of his quest, just like an everyman quest, just like the whole thing of Star Wars and
Right, the hero's journey.
The hero's journey. You know, they have to go through a series of judgments. He has to go through a series of what do you call it?
Just challenges.
Just challenges.
Things that he has to overcome.
That he has to overcome in order
Right.
to reach the end of his journey and to defeat the evil one and to gain back what he lost.
Right.
So that's really what the Dark Tower is. It's an everyman journey. Except, of course, that Roland is not exactly your kind of everyman.
Right. Now, the other thing, too, is that the format...
And, he also has... And he has companions, too.
Right. But the format in which this is going to be done, supposedly it's going to be, I believe, 3 standalone movies with a possibility of a TV series kind of bridging the gap. And I think, for all intents and purposes, that might be maybe not even enough, according to what you may think, that because of these 7 books may not be enough. Even the movies are going to be 3 hours plus for each one, and then TV series may not be enough to kind of convey the vastness or the enormity of the series.
Well, he created the series as an epic quest.
Right, which is
an epic adventure, which is something that you really can't. It's like taking the Everyman poems, you know, the Spencer's, you know, Fairy Queen, and all the other, you know, huge stanza epic poems that we had to read in school, and making them into a haiku, because this thing needs to run its course. I mean, there's the stories like the riddle that I would tell you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the one about the 5 men getting the arm in the mail.
Oh yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
I can do that one now.
No,
anyway.
you can't.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway. So, the thing is that this needs to run its course. Otherwise, 1, you won't understand what's going on. 2, you won't be satisfied by the ending. And 3, it just won't work. It'll just, like, fall apart. Like clothing that's not stitched right. It'll just fall apart in pieces.
Right.
And there'll be no cohesiveness to it. So, something like this, you need to go through the whole thing. And maybe a series would work.
Now, would you do a literal translation, kind of like they did with the Watchmen movie, in which they literally filmed almost the entire sequence, frame from frame, to the big screen? Would you want to do that in that version, to just do that kind of treatment?
Well, I mean, there are certain things that you need to go through in order to get the idea from the book. And then there's some things that I'm not sure if you can do, because I'm not sure how the copyright laws compare to TV copyright. Because, like, in one specific part, like in the Wastelands, they're traveling through, he has to deal with this thing called Blaine, which is a train. Blaine the train. But it's a train that has a personality, a train that basically has a face on it. It is basically a twisted, evil parody of Thomas the Tank Engine. And if you read it, you'll understand it. But the thing is that I'm not sure why he did that. I don't know if he just hates them, Barney's like the anthema to all normal children, But whatever the case is, that is it is Thomas for all intents and purposes. But the problem is that because this is probably the only version of this train that ever existed, maybe it was a prototype, I don't know. It's basically has artificial intelligence in it.
Right.
And it has a lot of features in it. But the thing is that I don't know if it's just evil or it has gone completely freaking insane. But it is not something that you want to deal with.
Right.
And that's one of the challenges he has to go through. He has to deal with Blaine. He's known as Blaine the Pain.
Blaine the Pain. Okay.
And he has to go through the Wastelands. He has to go through the drawing of the 3 with these strange lobster-type creatures that like to prey to the surf. He has to deal with the multiple personalities of this one woman he has to deal with multiple personality people. He has to deal with death on many levels. And he has to deal with practically being a foster father. Another part.
Right. Did you ever read the graphic novels at all? Or...
No. I the graphic novels came out, way after I started reading the series.
Right.
So after I read like the third or fourth one, I'm not sure how many books I've read. I stopped reading it because once he got to the part where he was actually talking about Susanna, who was the great love of his life, I couldn't read anymore because it was just like, it was so painful for him to deal with Susanna that once he actually started talking about it in the books, I couldn't read it.
Right.
So I had to like let myself loose off of it, and then maybe later on I'll start reading it again.
Okay.
So that's the reason why I stopped.
All right. So, in a nutshell, this is the reason why I brought you on, is because you knew much more about the Dark Tower series than I did. So if I was going to say, oh yeah, it's this thing that Stephen King wrote, but on bumps, come to the big screen, that's it. But this was something that I think was going to be really important to watch for, because this is kind of like on the level of what Tolkien did with Lord of the Rings, and now, of course, the popularity of Game of Thrones.
What do you mean Tolkien did with Lord of the Rings?
Tolkien.
But he didn't do it.
Lord of the Rings?
I mean, he wrote it.
Yeah.
But I'm saying he's not the one who adapted it to the screen.
No. I'm talking about... John, I'm talking about on the level of the enormity of having this kind of story.
Oh, the epic, yeah.
Being brought out in the book format and then adapting that to the big screen. Game of Thrones.
Also, Tolkien was also very into the whole biblical thing, just like C.S. Lewis is. Mm-hmm. And like the whole Aslan thing is all biblical.
Yeah, I mean, even his stories, they try to do with...
It was set during World War II.
Right.
It was set something similar to World War II.
Right, and they tried to bring the Chronicles of they tried to bring Chronicles of Narnia to the big screen, which the first one was great, which started on
No, that's what I'm saying. BBC already did this.
No, I know, but I'm talking about our version here.
Oh, yeah.
They tried to bring to the big screen, and after the first couple or third movies, it kind of waned a bit, and it never got to finish the damn series. So
I just hope kids read it anyway. I mean, I've read that entire series when I was in elementary school. I read the entire series of C.S. Lewis. I read I haven't read the whole... I read The Hobbit before, and I read The Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers. I didn't finish reading Return of the King.
Well, here's a spoiler. Towards the end, he returns. The king.
By me. Anyway. And I read the... Oh, God, you're such a nerdlehead. I mean, there's like so many books that I read just for pleasure when I was a kid.
Right.
Like these kind of big epic stories that I read because I wanted to when I was a kid. Not because I had to do it for school. I mean, hell, I practically failed English in middle school because I would not read what the teacher told me to read. Even though during the summer, I mean, it's not because I wasn't stupid. I mean, I read the entire Clan of the Cave Bear series. Mm-hmm. The entire thing during summer when I was in middle school, but I didn't want to read what they told me to read when I was in class, so I got a bad grade and I had to go into remedial English.
There you go. She not speak well enough to you people.
Me not smart.
Me dumb.
Me like to pick.
Me dumb like fire.
What?
All right, so we're going to end the tidbit of news that I have. Is the April is Poetry Month. And as I talked about in the last podcast, was that I was going to do each podcast and do a haiku. Well, believe it or not, this podcast is going to have my wife read her haiku, and which is a haiku for Futurama. So, let's hear your haiku for Futurama.
Okay. Only because you're paying me to. I also have regular poems, too.
Who cares about your poems?
Okay.
Just with the Futurama stuff.
Alright, so, first one is about Zoidberg. They call me Zoidberg. Trust me, I am a doctor. Where is your egg sac?
Ba-dum-bum.
Next one is the professor. This pill is too big. It's a suppository. Relax and swallow.
Boom. So, that's our haiku for this podcast. Ba-dum-bum. And I'm going to take a quick little break. When I come back, I'm going to talk about the thing that's going on with Deadpool and its current filming versus Marvel coming back on the comics, Twin Peaks, and a review of Daredevil, the first episode that aired today on Netflix. So just give me a second, and I'll be right back.
Twin Peaks without David Lynch. It's like a girl without a secret. Twin Peaks without David Lynch is like a dog without a bark.
Twin Peaks without David Lynch? It's like eyes without brows.
Twin Peaks without David Lynch is like a waitress without her uniform.
As I begin this last part of the podcast, I want to add to my voice about David Lynch and how Twin Peaks is really a part of him and vice versa. So my thing was that Twin Peaks without David Lynch is like Julie Cruz without a song to sing. So if you know Julie Cruz, she's just as important as part of the whole ensemble cast with her music, and have that eclectic voice be in the background of most all the episodes. So to me, I think it's so important that we do get David Lynch back on board to do this series. And in retrospect, because when I watched the series when it first aired, I have not really seen all of them since back then. But because it went on 2 seasons, he, I believe, only directed 6 episodes out of the 2 seasons. And we're going to get a short season, I think, of only 9 episodes. So if we're going to get the essence of what Twin Peaks is all about, David does need to be brought back into the fold, so to speak. Not to take anything away from Mark Frost, because Mark Frost also is part of the equation of what made Twin Peaks work. I was listening to a podcast on NPR called the Pop Culture Happy Hour. Sorry, it's called the Pop Culture Happy Hour. This is something that was dated back in October, and they talked about how the two of them were like Bert and Ernie, and how David Lynch was like Ernie and Bert was like Mark Frost. And this guy was going on and comparing these two characters to them, saying that Ernie is more the really far out there, whereas Bert kind of brings it back in. So Mark Frost basically was the one that helped give structure to Twin Peaks and help keep David's vision to be not so far off track. Because if you watch a lot of his movies, you know, visually they're stunning, they're weird, you don't know what to make of it at sometimes. But with Mark Frost, he kind of puts that in a framework that lends itself to be part of the story, and you're able to tell that story a certain way. So even though Mark Frost is capable of doing the series, it would not have the essence of Twin Peaks without David being part of that. So I think hopefully that Showtime does change its mind, or some way there is going to be some kind of resolution. But as you heard before, a lot of the people that were saying Twin Peaks without David Lynch is blah blah blah, those are all people that have worked on the show with David Lynch. So they're pretty much adamant about having him be helming this project again. And for a lot of diehard Twin Peaks fans, I don't want to say that's the end and be all. You know, it's either David or nothing. We'd rather have David. I don't want to say I don't want to have nothing, because it's important that we get Twin Peaks, because of the storyline should continue 25 years later. As the last episode or last couple episodes mentioned, that we're going to see Agent oh my god, I am blanking out here. Agent Cooper in 25 years. I want to see that be played out. I want to see how this gets resolved. So, however way it gets done, let's make it happen. But please, let's save Twin Peaks. Okay, the other part is the Deadpool movie is finally underway with Ryan Reynolds, which I have poo-pooed in the past because he has done a couple of bombs lately, such as R.I.P.D., Green Lantern for one. Deadpool seems to be the kind of movie that may be the best shot for him to kind of redeem his career, or redeem a superhero character that you know, it may be his best shot to kind of get back into the graces of what he was good for, and some good acting a couple of times. But I just think there was just some properties that just were just terrible beyond repair. Deadpool, as long as to keep that humor like he sort of did in Wolverine's Origins, I think it'd be great. But we have yet to see how this all turns out. On that token, Marvel Comics, or Disney I should say, is already killing off major characters in the Marvel Universe, kind of like the the DC version of the Infinity Crisis, or Infinite on Crisis, DC's versions of Infinite on Crisis on Infinite Earths, sorry, and in which they're combining the Ultimates universe and the regular universe, combining them together, and certain characters being killed off. And Deadpool already is killed off. So we're going to get no longer these comics to support a movie that's coming out. Fantastic Four, it's now complete. The X-Men comics are now complete. Wolverine is complete. So Disney is not going to make more comics because they own Marvel. And since they don't have the rights to these movies, which is over by 20th Century Fox, they're not going to do them until whenever. I don't know when those licenses will ever come back, because Fox is going to hold on to them because they do some good work. We're getting a third Wolverine movie. We're going to get a next X-Men Apocalypse movie. So there's no way they're going to give this up at any time soon. So Disney feels, well, we should not be promoting their movies. But honestly, and I talked about this in my blog, Disney would benefit from this two ways. And both of them is a win-win for them. If the movies are a bomb, they can always refer and say, you know what, these movies were not so great, but we got better properties on our comic book side. Come read really good quality comic books on the Fantastic Four and Deadpool and Wolverine and the X-Men. They're phenomenal. You'll love them. That's one option. Let's say the movies are gangbusters and they do really well. Well, based on that success, come read our comic books because we have great characters also and continue their storyline and so forth. So there is no reason to me for them to kill off their own characters, to the term cut off your nose to spite your face. You didn't need to do that. But Disney wants to do it their own way. Fine, I get it. The one thing I give them credit for, at least I understand their logic, was that since Disney now owns Star Wars, the new Disney release of Star Wars is that we're not going to hear that fanfare from 20th Century Fox back in the old days when it was owned by Fox Studios. So that's now gone. So any new versions of Star Wars, we're not going to hear that fanfare. But it makes sense from a logical point of view that they own it. They're making their own mark. So I unfortunately agree with them on that part. So, all right. So the last part is going to be Daredevil. I got up really early this morning before I went to work, and I had to see maybe about 40 minutes and then finished it when I got back. Let me tell you, when I finally finished that episode, I was really clapping it. The last 20 minutes of that episode, I was really all in it. And I was trying to think about how Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. really kind of stumbled out of the first episode, and it wasn't really quite on the mark, but this one is. I also compared it to Gotham, how it's a very dark and seedy town and so forth, and it's dealing with a large cast, and you have a lot of characters coming into play, so you had a lot of setup to do. But this is what a better Gotham story would have been. It's definitely a lot more focused. It's a lot more clear about who these people are, their characters. You get the sense of what happened after the events of Hell Kitchen. The events of the Avengers and what happened to Hell Kitchen, and how basically we don't see the Kingpin, but off screen, he is basically in power because of certain events that came into play. What I liked about this is that it kind of makes up for the Daredevil movie that Ben Affleck did, which I'm not knocking it 100% out of the park or knocking it down. I really liked the movie. It wasn't great, but the only thing I would say that this Daredevil was better, and I really hated this, but Ben Affleck's hair towards the back was kind of like muscled and tuffled. Basically, it was uncombed. But if you look at the comic books, it's kind of like the exact same way. But it really annoyed the hell out of me to the nth degree, watching him walking down the street with his hair messed up. But if I'm looking at this as an origin story, compared to that 2-hour movie, you are so much you are better off watching this one episode for less than an hour to get a sense of what Daredevil is going to be all about. And that was the problem with the movie, is that you had 2 hours to not only establish who Daredevil was, you put in a love interest, you put in the Kingpin, who you had to set up as the bad guy, which you had very little information, and he hires Bullseye, an assassin, to go take out Elektra, who is the love interest, and to fight against Daredevil. So within the span of, I think it was only an hour and a half movie, you had way too much things, you had way too much storyline to tell and not enough time to do it. Or at least develop it enough that you actually cared about the actors or cared about the storylines. For me, I got to see the director's cut, which is much longer and much slower pace, which I thought was better fleshed out and much better had it remained that way. But such is the way it is. Watching this Daredevil, I am so happy. And even though we only get 13 episodes, we have all 13 episodes. I was thinking about how much that this year, more than any, I've been watching a lot of TV within the same week that episodes aired. From Flash to Arrow to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and so forth. That's great. But then now that we're coming into Sweeps Month, which is in May, a lot of the episodes are 1 week here, 2 weeks off, another episode here, 3 weeks off. So now I realize I hate when that happens. Like, I have not watched Walking Dead since the break. I'm waiting for a day that I can just binge watch the whole remaining half of the season and just enjoy it. Because when I get caught up in a story, I really want to continue with that story. I hate not knowing when episodes are going to be airing. In the case of Netflix, I have all the episodes right now. I can choose to do this all in one shot or piecemeal it one at a time. It's up to me. I control that. I appreciate that control more now, especially with the fact that Daredevil is so damn good. And I'm sure that had I had the option, I would have waited to see Gotham when the first season was complete and just go all the way through and enjoy the process. So it's been a struggle to enjoy the shows that I've been watching more than ever on regular TV. So it's going to be one of those, if Daredevil is going to be good, I want to see how Jessica Jones is going to look out. I want to see how Jessica Jones fares. Luke Cage, and we get Iron Fist, we get the Defenders, how that all gets mapped through, including to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It really boggles me as how this is all going to play out. But in fairness, just as Marvel has been really good with controlling that whole universe, DC is still on the side waiting for those movies to happen, but we're getting really good quality shows like Arrow and Arrow and The Flash. Plus, we're supposed to get a spin-off series, which I can see that better on DC side because they have some good stuff. But again, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., not so much. But there is a connection to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I read about today, in which there is a poster that Matt towards the end is working out in a gym, and it's a poster of his dad and Kree Crusher. Kree Crusher was going to be was on the first episode of Agents of Shield. So the connection is that that's the exact same person as Matt Murdock's father fought back in the ring back in the day. How that person still is that youthful, we don't know yet, but that's the exact same person. So that's how we're going to get that, the Absorbing Man connection to Netflix, to the ABC series of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So the other reference I wanted to talk about was the Daredevil. When I first saw was with Rex Smith back in the day, 1989, I believe, with Bill Bixby, The Trial of the Incredible Hulk, in which we get a team up with Daredevil and the Hulk, which was kind of cool. But it was Rex Smith, so I'm not knocking him, but it's Rex Smith. So, but actually, you know what? He did a good job for what he had to work with. It was good. And ironically enough, he also had the exact same black suit. So it's like, oh, okay, it's kind of a nice little nod if that's what they were going with. But okay, well, I'll go with that. The only thing that really bothered me at the first incarnation of Daredevil was this. John Rhys Davies was the bad guy. He was the kingpin, and he was kind of floating away on this air tram. I don't know, whatever you want to call this, plane, helicopter hybrid, but it was flying really slowly and just kind of hovering over Rex Smith playing Matt, and he's screaming at him like he's really angry, and just like, well, just go up there and smack him. It's not that far away. I mean, I know you're blind and all, but you see him. You don't scream at him just floating away. You could have done something about it, but he just screamed like, I'll get you. Like, but you can. What the hell are you waiting for? But, you know, such is the way of life. We only get that one TV movie for the Daredevil and the Incredible Hulk. But again, I'm really, really stoked about what I saw on Daredevil. So I'm taking a cue from the NPR Happy Hour Pop Culture Podcast, in which they end their show on what makes them happy. I'm going to see how this plays out, but I'm going to talk about, for this week, what made me happy but geeky, meaning what made me geek out the most. Well, a couple of things. One of the things that came across was when I was laid off as a librarian, I had to sell a lot of my DVD collection on a garage sale, and one of them was my Lord of the Rings collection. You know, selling the whole thing like for next to nothing. So, flash forward, you know, I'm slowly getting back my collection. So the only thing that I was missing was the two towers, the one right in the middle. So I knew where I need to go to get that one movie and get it for super cheap. And when I did, when I went to the store, it was right in front. I didn't have to go digging for it. It was just like, it knew that that's exactly where it needed to be for me to pick it up. So for $5, I picked up the two towers, widescreen, 2-disc set, and it was mine. So that made me happy. Seeing Daredevil this morning made me extremely happy. In fact, I mean, this whole week of just watching that and S.H.I.E.L.D. and talking about the podcast and thinking about in the next couple of weeks we're going to have Avengers. I mean, I'm really getting up this kind of geeky nirvana that I'm going to have this buzz that I just cannot wait for this day for it to happen, to actually finally see all these things come together and make this, you know, one of the better summers as opposed to last year. So I'm really psyched about what's coming down the line. So that's what's making me geeky this week, and it's going to be making me geeky for a while. So again, let me know what you think about my podcast. This is longer than usual. I'm sorry, but I figured why not? I wanted to talk about the Dark Tower series because, again, it's important to look at the next big thing, hopefully, that's going to be coming down the pike. And we had Twin Peaks news and Daredevil, so it was, again, a lot of stuff that I just could not just cram in just 15 minutes. So I apologize. Yes. Am I sorry? No. It had to be done. So, let me know what you think. Email me at the Monster Sci-Fi Show at gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter. Find me on my Facebook page. But please, let me know what you think. You are the reason why I do this podcast. I know you guys are listening out there. I see the downloads. And I see you doing the backlog of my older podcasts. So, obviously I'm doing something. If you want to hear more things or less things, I need to know. You are my guide to get myself better to do better podcasts. That's all I can say. So, good night, folks, and hopefully in the future, my co-host Mr. J and I will be doing a complete review of Daredevil, the whole 13-episode season. So, whenever that happens, fingers crossed, it'll be very soon. Okay? So, good night, and thank you again for listening to the Monster Sci-Fi Show. Sci-fi, from a certain point of view. Good night, folks.